My Destined 1, Tensura x Arifureta by Void Kane. Ch 67. Imperial Castle. The finale. When they entered the room, what caught their eyes was a monotonous space with very little decoration and a table long enough to seat more than 30 people. In the presiding position was the Emperor of the Holshire Empire, Gerhard D. Holshire, propping his chin with a fearless smile. There were 2 people behind him. They gave off a sharp atmosphere as if implying, "We'll accept it all," and stood waiting for orders. And, even though he didn't show his face, in that room, there were still 2 people on either side of the wall, 4 people on the ceiling, and Hajime also saw 2 people hiding their breath outside the door they went through. Rimuru is already awake of their presence even before they enter, since Rimuru's universal perception. Not only were there 2 people behind Gaharudo, but those who were hiding also had remarkable skills. "So, are you Nagumo Hajime and Nagumo Rimuru?" When Rimuru, Hajime, and the others entered, Liliana also guided them. After quickly skimming the greetings of the hero Kuki, Gaharudo released pressure as he looked at Rimuru and Hajime with fierce eyes. It was the pressure of a man who ruled over a few 100,000 people, and everyone was wild, strong, and believed in strength. Not a joke. Liliana, who was also in the royal family, let out a small groan from that pressure. Kuki and the others also instinctively retreated. However, facing that tremendous pressure, the 10 Rimuru, Hajime, Yu, Shia, Tio, Kaori, Seal, Akame, Sakura, and Chloe remained calm. From the beginning, even Kaori had some experience from surviving fighting the undead monster that existed since ancient times in the Marugini seabed ruins. So even if the Emperor emitted incredible pressure, compared to the monsters in the Great Labyrinth, it was like a breeze. Who is trying to intimate us? But sad to say, his attempt or noting but a joke. Even King Gazel is more intimating even if he doesn't do anything, Rimuru thought. Gaharudo's lips gradually raised more and more with interest as he saw that Hajime and Rimuru's group did not waver. Then Hajime replied, "Yes, I am Nagumo Hajime and this is my brother Nagumo Rimuru. It is an honor to know your name, the Emperor of the Empire." Placing a hand on his chest and bowing his head slightly, Hajime received the shocked looks of Kuki and the others at his words. Their eyes were wide and clearly stating, "You, who," especially Liliana, her body was shaking when she was under Gaharudo's pressure and let out a small groan. Although her expression changed a bit, it was nothing compared to her terrified expression as she looked at Hajime right now. Even Rimuru and Seal got surprised by that. Hajime did. Hajime has also been a human who knows TPO, time, place, occasion. However, he often ignored it. But, since he had work to do in the Imperial Castle this time, he didn't want to be thrown out for disrespecting the Emperor. Since he no longer believes in God, the title, Apostle of the Gods, is probably not useful anymore. The only way to pass is the title of the hero. That's why he realized he needed to at least keep a minimum of politeness. Even though the person standing there was exactly Hajime. "Kukuku. I haven't even thought of this. What's with your normally arrogant attitude? Is it a little different from the description of some wed princess?" However, Gaharudo only laughed because he felt amused. Hajime glanced at Liliana. "Hime-san, you, how much nonsense have you said, eh? Liliana was glared at by Hajime. Pui, she looked away. When Gaharudo asked about Hajime's personality, she unintentionally shouted and complained about the way she was being treated. "It doesn't fit at all, just act like you normally do. I'm quite interested in you." Is that so? Then, as usual, Kuku, go ahead." Although they were all surprised by Hajime's sudden transformation, they all sat down in order. "And you seem strong. What, to be one of my guard?" Gaharudo said towards Rimuru. "Sorry to disappoint, but I won't serve under anyone," Rimuru said without hesitation. Gaharudo tried to convince Rimuru to serve under him, but Rimuru kept rejecting him. After a few minutes, finally Gaharudo took his eyes off Rimuru. He noticed Chloe, Yu, and the girls sitting next to Rimuru and Hajime and watched them amused. His eyes were especially glaring at Shia. Next, he looked over at Kuki and the others, then at Shizuku, who was sitting next to Kuki, and smiled ear to ear. "Shizuku, long time no see. You finally decided to be my wife?" Hearing this, Rimuru looked at Gaharudo as if saying, "I'll kill you if you touch her." "Oh, oi, Shizuku refused before Shizuku could react, Kuki got angry. Gaharudo glanced at Kuki for an instant, then looked at Shizuku again and started to laugh smugly. Kuki had an "I don't care" attitude, but blue veins were floating on his forehead. For the first time Rimuru seems to have the same feeling as Kuki. While staring at the three with a long look, Shizuku put on a resolute expression and said, "I have no intention of taking back my word. I will decline your offer. It's frustrating, but otherwise it wouldn't be so interesting. Let me tell you, I'm much better than the people in your world. I'll wait for the day when you shyly accept your love for me. That day will forever never come. Best of all, don't you already have a queen? So what? Are you upset about being a concubine? Fumu, there'll be a lot of trouble if you become an official wife. I didn't mean that. You'll have sex with another woman who isn't the queen. What are you talking about? I'm the emperor. 10 or 20 concubines is normal. Giyu, that's right. Anyway, I'll never belong to the emperor. Please give up. Ma, you can't return anymore. You'll be stuck in this world for quite some time. I'll use that time to convince you. Kuku, get ready, Shizuku. Oi! Rimuru, who had enough, spoke with an angry tone. What do you want, Nagumo Rimuru? She already refuses your proposal. I suggest you give up or else. Or else what? Or else you'll die. Rimuru moves behind Gaharudo, pointing his hand on Gaharudo's back, ready to pierce him from behind. Everyone got surprised by the sudden movement of Rimuru, that include the people that are hiding. Ha 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 ha, are you treating me as an emperor? Gaharudo asked Rimuru. A treat? Ha ha. This is not a treat, but I'm giving you a chance to live, Rimuru said seriously. His usual easygoing attitude can't be seen in his current actions. For Gaharudo, who really likes Shizuku. What an ambitious emperor. He did not give up easily when rejected. His sharp gaze was still fixed on Shizuku. Even though Shizuku looked away with distaste from the bottom of her heart, she didn't care about that gaze at all. Then, coincidentally, the place where Shizuku looked over was Rimuru's eyes. Rimuru, whose gaze is on Shizuku, absolutely experienced, with a color of ridicule and amusement. Shizuku angrily flicked away the sugar cubes prepared for her tea with her fingers. Although the power isn't that strong, the sugar ball flew with excellent power, and it precisely aimed at Rimuru, who is standing behind the emperor. However, instead of flying directly in the face, it fell into Rimuru's mouth and was caught. Mogo mogo. Rimuru chewed the sugar ball with the glow of pride around him. When Gaharudo saw her like that, he turned around his sharp gaze toward Rimuru. I like to convey a lot of things. Foon, this situation is quite interesting. Nagumo Rimuru. Even though I have a mountain of questions I want you to answer, first of all, explain this one. And what's that? You cuddled with my Shizuku, right? Bufu, you. Because Gaharudo suddenly asked something completely unexpected with an enthusiastic expression. Several people, including Shizuku, spat out the tea. Even the guard behind Gaharudo. Your Majesty. The first thing you want to ask is this. With a pained expression on his face. They also seem to be experienced people. Wait, Emperor. What are you saying all of a sudden? Shizuku, you should shut up. I'll hear that from Nagumo Rimuru right now. Shizuku tried to wake Gaharudo by Tsukomi, but he turned his gaze to Rimuru and ignored her. On the other side, Rimuru was surprised. What did you think to come to that conclusion? Rimuru asked. Obviously Shizuku forgave you because of her kindness. Judging from her attitude, I don't think you and her have a more distant relationship than friends, but prevention is better than cure. Sick. There's no way that's going to happen. Fumu, it doesn't seem like an excuse. Then, what do you think of Shizuku? Because of that question, all eyes in the room turned to Rimuru. The gazes that conveyed various things from everyone were directed at him. Of course, I loved her, she's my destined one after all, is what Rimuru thought to himself, but he can't say that since there will be more questions. Rimuru sighed because the first question the emperor asked after meeting him was about his relationship with Shizuku. Shizuku's expression looked very excited. Hajime, who is listening, tilted his head and looked at her. Because of something, it feels like Shizuku's ears are starting to turn red. The answer, honest impression, is, she's like a special person. Okay, you want to fight, don't you, Nagumo Rimuru? Do you really wish to die, huh? Rimuru said, releasing a fraction of his Demon Lord's haki since using his true dragon haki will be an overkill. The atmosphere became even more intense. Suzu and Kuki sitting next to Shizuku panicked and stopped her with all their might. Ha ha ha, I like your attitude, young man. Ma, okay. Shizuku, don't suddenly fall in love, okay? Because you're mine. Huh, I already. Rimuru tried to say something but got interrupted by Shizuku. I already said it, but I don't intend to be of the day and I can love whoever I want. Stop talking nonsense and get back to the main topic. Shizuku said while her face is red as a tomato since hearing that she is spatial for Rimuru. I understand. Don't be so angry. The more you deny, the less valuable your words will become? Nugu, Shizuku involuntarily let out a groan to refute Gaharudo's words. But then she sat down angrily. Suzu comforted her with a wry smile, but for some reason, Kuki glared at Rimuru. Nagumo, Rimuru. You, don't touch Shizuku? I have no reason to obey your order? This conversation isn't necessary, huh? This matter is about a concubine. Or a new empress, you know. It even affects the future of the empire. Ma, what I'm going to say is not about Shizuku. You should already know, it's about you two's abnormality. Gaharudo shifted his gaze from Shizuku to Hajime and Rimuru sat back in his seat. He thought it was time and the atmosphere gradually changed. Different from the excitement from before, now there was only ambition, and it radiated like a sharp blade. Gaharudo quickly got to the point and asked about the biggest reason he wanted to meet Rimuru, Hajime, and others. I've heard some information from Princess Liliana. You two are the one who conquered the great labyrinths and gained the ability to create artifacts. Completely repelled the demon race's army, and was able to travel the usual distance that takes 2 months in less than 2 days. Right? Ah. And you have no intention of sharing your artifact with both the kingdom and the empire? Ah. Fun, monopolizing power like that. Do you think we'll allow that? Whose permission is needed? If you won't allow us, then what are you going to do to us? Gaharudo fixed his gaze on Hajime upon hearing that question. Gaharudo's ambitions were growing bigger and bigger, and Liliana started to grit her teeth and worry non-stop. The bodyguards behind Gaharudo began to radiate close before even him. Contrary to that, the presence of the people hiding in the room gradually faded. The situation right now is tough. Rimuru stayed silent since he knows that nothing can harm them. Because of that tense atmosphere, Kuki and others' faces froze and prepared to fight. However, Hajime and the others completely stopped the killing intent because of their heavy killing intent. Even though it isn't as powerful as what Rimuru released earlier, it's still able to send chills to every people in the room. Then Hajime calmly raised the teacup. In that instant, he glanced towards the presence of the people hiding. Have we been found out? They say. Can feel the shock in their presence. Ha ha ha. Stop it, stop it. We're completely grabbed by the nape of the neck. These guys really are flesh and blood monsters. If we fight, we'll all be annihilated. Master, this man also had brain. Seal said to Rimuru using thought communication. You thought is a muscle-brained seal. Yes. Well, I'm not gonna argue, I also thought the same, Rimuru said, and they continued to listen. Gaharudo smiled and hid his ambition. The people around who were emitting a dangerous atmosphere also hid it. Why do you seem so elated? Hajime. Oi, I'm the leader of the empire, you know. If you're going up against the strong, it's a lie to say your heart doesn't jump, right? Kuki and the others, even though they didn't understand what was going on, they let out a breath because the atmosphere was less serious. Hajime also Tsukomi Gaharudo, who was unusually cheerful. Gaharudo's answer was clearly that of a believer in the rule of the strong ruled absolute. Even so, the women around you two are unusual. Oi, where did you find them? Since they are women of such caliber, Nagumo Hajime, Nagumo Rimuru, I want to ask you directly, for me to own one of them. Don't say such stupid things. Do you have a problem with your head? No, if it's Tio then it's fine. Hajime said. Quote comma exclamation mark question mark. What do you say? So, Goshujin-sama always wanted to sell this woman to someone else. Being treated like this woman has never felt this way. Satisfied It's a bit of a problem, even though she has the appearance of a wise woman. Sorry, Even emperors have their limits. As expected, it's a bit of a girl to sink too deeply into perversion. That gentleman, saying that right in front of the person. Surely, after this unfaithful woman is raped by the emperor, he will tease her right in front of Goshujin's Sama eyes. By the way, I need to change my underwear. Even Gaharudo and everyone else was dumbfounded looking at Tio's strangely satisfied expression. Then they turned their gaze to Hajime, who had traveled with a woman who was this perverted. Gahard cleared his throat to change the subject. As for me, I'm quite interested in the rabbit man over there. I've never seen a rabbit person with that hair and blood before, and she completely ignored my killing intent. That attitude reminded me of a toy. I caught her earlier, okay. Because of Gahard's word, toy, Shia's eyes twitched in response. You sat next to her, quietly holding Shia's hand under the table. Even if you tell me about your toys. Don't you know? Do you want to check them out later? I still have some, even though they're women and children, they're quite. I am not interested. Gaharudo's words were a bluff. However, Gaharudo's attack wasn't over yet. They have a special type of short sword and they're first class, doesn't even that interest you, transformation master? No. I see. By the way, yesterday, there were some guys who broke out of the labyrinth, could easily break into the Imperial Castle and get out of there. Such a thing can only be done by special artifacts or magic, what do you think? I do not know. How about you, Nagumo Rimuru? I have no idea on what you are talking about, Rimuru said. That's fine. The last question I want to know is, what do you two think about gods? I am not interested. Hajime replied, but Rimuru stayed silent since he knows about the gods that broke out of the seal. Okay, got it. This impulsive core. Gaharudo cursed and Garihi scratched his head. But for some reason, his expression remained cheerful. He seemed to sympathize with his opponent arguing with him. From what he received in the conversation, Gaharudo seemed to have guessed that Hajime and Rimuru were involved with the Howlia clan. He knew that the prison break took place according to Rimuru or Hajime's instructions. And he seemed to understand that Hajime was neutral to the affairs of this world from his indifferent answers. At least, they wouldn't have to confront Hajime, although he is concerned a little about Rimuru who didn't answer. After all, the Imperial Castle that had not been terrorized was a convincing demonstration. Then at that time, a person waiting behind Gaharudo whispered something in his ear. Gaharudo slowly stood up. I've heard at least the information I need to know, moreover, I've understood, so everything is as it should be. That's right. Tonight, we'll have a party. The reception is also the wedding ceremony of my son and the princess. Although the truth is completely different from imagination if no one knows about it, the blessing of hero, or apostle of God, is an honor. I hope everyone will be present. Even though Hiro-kun is just a formality. Gaharudo ignored Kuki and others' stupid looks as they felt like they heard lightning in their ears, and threw a provocative glare at the two brothers with a fearless smile. Then he left the room with dignity. The door slammed shut, and Kuki and the others finally regained their senses and quickly asked Liliana. Lily, what's the wedding? What exactly happened? What happened, princess? I thought you liked my brother. Even Rimuru got surprises, not that he didn't expect it, is just a surprise that Lily didn't ask Hajime for help. What are you talking about, Rimuru-kun? That, not to mention the mad gods. Let's say, if the demon race attacks us, there's no other way but to respond. The king of our country has passed away, the successor only at the age of 10, he is not yet qualified to lead the country, so it is necessary to strengthen our relationship with our allies. Is that why Lily has to be engaged to the prince? Yes. My fiancé is the next Prince Sama. There have been many discussions about our marriage before. He was basically my fiancé, so in the end, sooner or later, this party also took place. We were exactly shaken by the invasion of the demon race, I mean. So what about the kingdom? Didn't you discuss this with them? The majority has approved of this before, so there won't be any dissent. From the beginning, it's been like that. Besides, right now, the one who shouldered the heaviest burden with the kingdom is me. Randell is just a puppet, and since Okasama never shows up. So, there's no problem. Right now, quick decisions are essential. Liliana said with a determined expression. Kuki and the others gasped, then they quickly closed their mouths with sourness on their faces. Does Lily like that person? It's not a matter of liking it or not. This will build a bond between the two countries. Just that, the successor Prince Sama has had many lovers, to the point where I feel sick to my stomach because of that number. In my position, marrying another prince is disproportionate, so it can't be helped. Why, can I be okay with this? I don't even like him. It's strange to marry such a man. If you look at it from the outside, it's true, because I'm the princess of the royal family. From the moment I was born, it's obvious that I've been attached to this fate. You said the obvious, even Lily is a girl. Do you want to marry someone that you honestly don't have any feelings for? Kuki couldn't understand and shouted. Liliana could only reply with a troubled smile. Liliana is a girl. She became particularly close friends with girls from other worlds. If it was girly conversations with Kaori and Shizuku, it was obvious that she wished for a romance. Princess, I know that you are holding back and I know that you love someone else. I suggest, to be honest with your feeling. I know the feeling of regret more than anyone, so think about it, and if you need help just ask me or my brother, Rimuru said seriously. Since Rimuru had experienced regret over and over again, decided to give advice to Lily. But it's your call, Lily, just make sure you won't regret your actions, Rimuru said. Hearing this, Liliana gave a wry smile. Seeing Liliana, who was smiling wryly, Shizuku stopped Rimuru. She also stopped Kuki, who was arguing to the point of exaggeration. Inside that confused atmosphere, Hajime slowly left his seat and tried to walk out of the room like nothing happened. Because of that, Kuki decided to get angry at the fish. Oi Nagumo, don't you feel anything about this? Huh, what do you think I have to do with Haim-san's marriage? Furthermore, isn't this a political marriage? Above all, this isn't something an amateur can interfere with. Enter. Goo, but. More importantly, there's a lot we need to do. If you act rashly and end up hindering us, you understand. After Hajime said that, you and the others also quickly left. Rimuru and his fiancée followed after. While quelling the enraged Kuki, because of what would happen in the near future, the engagement ceremony would inevitably turn into a mess. Shizuku looked up at the ceiling with fatigue. After Rimuru, Hajime, and the others left, Shizuku and the others chatted about a few stories. Then they returned to the rooms that had been prepared by the maids on duty since Liliana had to go get ready for tonight. For this holiday, the main thing to prepare is the dress. Ma, that's amazing, Liliana-sama. Indeed, you look like a flower fairy. Surely, your majesty will be pleased too. Finally, one of the selected dresses was chosen after trying on dozens of others. Liliana twirled around in front of the full-length mirror, and the red-faced maids around her gave out compliments. Although she was only 14 years old, she possessed the delicate charm of a woman, which combined with the pale pink dress amplified it to the extreme. As one of the maids said, she possessed the cuteness of a flower spirit. So, what? We'll choose this one. Next is the jewelry. Liliana herself also agreed with a nod. No matter what kind of a political marriage this was, Bias D. Horasha, the next prince, was extremely fond of women just like his father. At several encounters in the past, he looked at Liliana had the eyes of a lecher when she wasn't even 10 years old, but that Trash's skills weren't half-baked. He called a low-level knight to practice back in the kingdom and flaunted his strength. His strength by making fun of that knight, but the fact that he would become her husband didn't change. So Liliana couldn't embarrass her fiancé. Since this was an engagement ceremony, she intended to dress in a way that maximized her potential. Then suddenly the words of Rimuru and the others popped into her head, especially the words of Rimuru, who said, "Make sure you won't regret your actions." She shakes the phrase out of her mind. Liliana is also a girl. She is also famous for being compared to the talented women in the Harihi kingdom, so she also aspires to live like a normal girl. When she is in a difficult situation, the prince will appear, then they are attracted to each other by that fateful meeting. She even comes up with stories about the obstacles they have to overcome for their love. Age. However, it is an illusory future. Because Liliana was wise, she accepted the fact that she would have to carry out a mission for the country herself from a young age. That's why, even if she wanted to refuse her fiancé from the bottom of her heart, her feelings of wanting to be a good wife were true. She decided to take care of the next prince after the wedding party. Then, at the same time, suddenly the outside of the room became noisy. Without a knock, the door to Liliana's room burst open and a large man casually and rudely entered. Even though he was stopped by the kingdom's knights protecting Liliana, he didn't even notice. "Who, is that the dress for tonight? That's fine." Bias-sama. Suddenly entering a lady's room is not an act of courtesy. "Ah, I'll be your husband, you know. Why are you teaching me wisdom?" The one who was responding to Liliana's advice with a troubled look was Bias D. Holscher, to whom she was engaged. Just like a few years ago, he still had an air of horribly rudeness. Disinterested in his surroundings, he continued to look at Liliana from top to bottom. A chill ran down Liliana's spine. "Oi, you all want to get out of here." Bias pursed his lips, suddenly telling all of Liliana's maids and knights to leave. He threatened the confused people, and the maids panicked and left the room. However, the knights were naturally hesitant. Liliana noticed Bias' dangerous gaze. Not knowing what to do, she ordered the knights to wait outside the room. "Foon, when training your dogs, be tough." They are not dogs. They are my important vassals. More rebellious than I thought. Cuckoo, just like when she was less than 10 years old, it was wonderful to be looked at with those disgusting eyes. At that time, I decided that she would be mine. As he said that, with a disgusting smile on his face, Bias looked at Liliana, who was completely stunned, and suddenly her breasts were squeezed. No, Ida. Even so, she's still mature. Obviously not enough, but erotic. No, stop. With that act of violence, Liliana grimaced in pain. When Bias saw her expression, his laughter deepened, and then he pushed Liliana to the ground. Even though Liliana shouted, the knights outside didn't seem to notice. "You can cry as much as you want. Because this room has a special mechanism, sound can't be transmitted outside. Ma, even if those dogs come in, they can't do anything. After all, you want them to see your virginity taken." "Coo. Ha 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 ha. Why? This thing." Liliana turned pale as she thought about what was about to happen. She angrily glared at Bias. "That's it. Eyes of resistance, pain, despair. I want to turn that look into pleasure. Most of all, I love toying with opponents to make them submit. For those who are desperately struggling, there is no greater pleasure than making them kneel and bow their heads. If you taste this pleasure even once, you will not be able to live without it. Liliana. When I first met you, she judged me harshly by her eyes. I thought I wanted to humiliate her. Someone like you. Nah, Liliana. More than after the wedding, if she lost her virginity before the engagement party, what face would she show there? When enduring pain in her lower abdomen, she would show emotion in front of the attendees. Ah, I can't wait to see it. Assuming, no matter how much she loathes him, if she supports him as a wife, surely, he will eventually become a great emperor. No, the heart that Liliana has strengthened now begins cracks appear. Liliana realized. The one who was smirking in front of her eyes only wanted to see Liliana's tears of resignation and regret. In other words, he was definitely the successor prince of the empire. The dress she chose so as not to embarrass Bias was ripped off by him. Her flawless pearl-white skin was exposed, and Liliana's face reddened with humiliation. Both her hands were pinned on top of her head. She couldn't cover her body with her legs. Bias sneered as if he was about to kiss her, and his face slowly drew closer to Liliana. Almost, Liliana's eyes opened wide in fear. She couldn't turn her face away because her chin was being held tightly. Without realizing it, tears began to flow from the corners of her eyelids from fear and humiliation. Then she thought, I was mentally preparing for the wedding, but as expected, it was impossible. This is just too much. In fact, she wants to dedicate her body and soul to the man she loves and wants to be happy with. It was a girl's sincere feelings oozing out from the gap in the armor bearing the princess's name that was hiding it. And, she recalled the story of Kaori and Shizuku. At the moment of life and death, they rushed forward, smashing all injustice with his overwhelming absurdity. The two girls were saved from danger, like a fairy tale. If she prays, can she be saved? Liliana mocked herself for that stupid thought, even though her heart longed for it. In other words, save me with already. At that moment, Liliana was being pushed to the floor by Bias. Something appeared behind him, something small like a spider swinging down from the ceiling, and she saw it land on his shoulder. Unmarketable. Liliana's eyes widened in surprise at the thing. When the spider lifted one of its legs, that leg sank into Bias' neck. Oh, what? At this point, my neck. He felt the pain pass through his neck. Bias, who was about to lock Liliana's lips, stopped and put his hand on her neck. At the same time, the spider had recoiled with its silken thread dangling from the ceiling. Liliana looked at the scene in front of her in surprise. Bias suddenly twisted his body, and his eyes closed. Immediately after that, he lost consciousness and fell on top of Liliana. In front of Liliana, who was still in shock, once again, the spider crawled down on Bias. The man who was still on top of Liliana. The spider climbed down his shoulder and appeared before Liliana's eyes. When viewed from a close distance, Liliana noticed the strangeness of the spider. Spiders. Metal. That's right. The spider on Bias' shoulder was made of metal. In front of Liliana, who was still staring with pepper eyes. Stop, she said. Pusu. The metal spider poked Bias' neck with a different paw from before. Even though he was unconscious, he was still startled. Bias began to tremble. He was still breathing, so it wasn't the finishing blow. Liliana couldn't think of any reason for it to kill Bias either. And the girl silently looked at the spider in front of her eyes. If she looked closer, Liliana noticed that the metal spider's eyes were shining like crystal. Then it crawled up the thread and gently returned to the ceiling. Ah, wait, please wait a minute. Could it be, Though Liliana confusedly called it, the metal spider continued to ignore her, while clinging to the ceiling with its 8 legs. Kisa kisa. It crawled to the outer wall of the room. Then the crimson light emitted. It crawled out of the room while closing the hole it just made and disappeared. Still sitting there, Liliana covered her body with her torn skirt, and finally understanding the situation, she muttered to herself with a smile on her face. Thank you. Nagumo-san. Liliana was Bias' fiancé. Now that she was saved, she understood that everything was just a coincidence. But, even so, she was still happy that someone answered her unsaid cry for help earlier. Liliana's hands were now holding onto the torn skirt in front of her chest, but it seemed she was trying to hold onto something else so it wouldn't be taken away. Rimuru, Hajime, and the others left the living room and were led to another room arranged by the maids. After sending the maids back, Hajime, who had always kept his eyes closed and focused on something, suddenly opened his eyes. Yu noticed that and called out to Hajime with the same modesty as usual. What's wrong, Hajime? Excellent. Although there was a bit of trouble in the middle, 60% of the plan is done. The reply Yu received was slow and seemed to be focused on something else. Soon ha. As expected, there are a lot of traps? That's right. But there's no reason to disable all of them. Fumu, there's a huge party today. If people gather, it's easy to act in many ways. Looks like people are finally starting to gather in the banquet hall, huh? Will things go well? Shia said with a slightly uneasy expression on her face. Anyway, it was a once-in-a-lifetime event that brought her family to a turning point. It would be odd if she remained calm. Looking at Shia like that, Hajime touched her rabbit ears. Yu stroked Shia's cheek. Tio combed her hair. And Kaori gripped her hand tightly. Rimuru and the others gave her a gentle smile. Because her comrades were smiling at her, Shia felt something stuck in her throat. But she didn't cry. Even if only in the blink of an eye, happy tears fall. It is too early to cry when things have not begun. Right now, like her usual aunt, a bright smile appeared on Shia's lips. I'm not alone. My family is here too. I'm so happy to have met everyone. Her smile conveys those thoughts. That was the charm that Hajime and the others liked in Shia. Hajime confirmed that Shia was smiling. He was glad to have a strong comrade, and a mischievous smile just like a child appeared on his face. Now then, should we prepare the stage for the main actors? Rimuru said. Hajime, Shia, Yu, Tio, Kaori, Akame, Chloe, Sakura, and Seal with those words also made similar faces and nodded decisively. They walk until Rimuru receives a thought communication through the soul corridor. Rimuru-sama. What is it, Diablo? Has the war ended? We are almost done, my lord, but Vesta Duno and Gabel Duno wanted to ask for permission to use those machines. Diablo said. Machines? Ah. Those things are still on trial period. It's not yet tested for combat, right? Indeed Rimuru-sama, but I think this can be a good chance to try this new technology. You have a point. Alright, you all are free to use it, but make sure no one dies on our side, Rimuru said. As you wish my lord, Diablo replied, and turn off the thought communication.